Hi there, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be using our Onefinity Elite Foreman with our Redline 1.5 kilowatt spindle to be able to create a whiskey smoker out of a piece of scrap wood. The files for this are completely free and we're going to be using G-code, so you can download those using the link below this video. I also have every single one of these products that I'm going to be using, from the machines to the spindles to the bits to anything else that I can think of. And if there's a question that you might have of something that I just briefly ran over, go ahead and leave that as a comment below this video, because I want this to be as educational as possible. So let's go ahead and jump right in. First and foremost, you need to go ahead and download the files completely for free and put them on a USB drive. If you put them on your USB drive and for some reason your machine is not reading them, your USB drive needs to be formatted to FAT32, I believe it is. Correct me in the comments down below if it's not, but you need to format your USB first and foremost so that your Masso can actually read it. It plugs in right down here. Once you have your files in here, then you can go ahead and find them, which we're going to be doing in a second, but I do want to go ahead and mention that all of this revolves around this piece of material. You need to have a piece of material that is 8 inches by 8 inches by 3/4 inches. That is very, very important. If you want to do this out of hardwood, softwood, MDF, plywood, that doesn't matter, but your material has to be 8 by 8 by 3/4 inches for it to work with this G-code specifically. One of the things about G-code is it does exactly the same thing every single time. It is, for our purposes, not customizable, and it is a single file that does a single thing. So if you want to be able to cut out 2 of these whiskey smokers, you'd have to run this exactly the same time twice instead of saying, I just want it to run 2. G-code doesn't do that, and that is one of the reasons why people should not sell G-code. But if you download these files and follow along exactly to these instructions, you'll be getting the exact same results as me in a very quick and easy way. The big thing that we're focusing on this video in particular is that we're going to be using 2 different bits. You're going to be required to have a 60-degree V-bit that is 3/8 of an inch wide as far as the bit is concerned, and it is 60-degree angle. For that, we're using our 60-degree Groovy Jenny from Cadence Manufacturing, linked below if you would like to look at it. And also we're going to be using a 1/4 inch bit. You can use an up shear bit, which is not going to give you as clean of a cut. You can use a down shear bit, which is what we're going to be using, and you can also use a compression bit. As long as it is a 1/4 inch, you can work for this specific file, and those are the only 2 bits that we're going to be using. So let's go ahead and home the machine so that I can show you all that process, and then we're going to put down our material and then zero our bit onto the material. Okay, so my machine currently was homed and then I moved it over for the intro of this video, but we're gonna go ahead and turn the machine off and then turn it back on so that you can start off at that point with me and know that you're doing all the correct steps. So let's go ahead and shut down the power. I have all of mine hooked up to an extension cord back here, just so that I have one single button to be able to click on and off for all of this to work. As you can see, the machine is booting up and the screen boots up incredibly quickly, and it's going to prompt us to do 2 things. One is to be able to hit this emergency stop button right here. So depress it and then turn it. That's going to change it so that it is now active again, and that's going to tell the machine that this works in case for some reason you need to hit this later. Next, this little yellow flashing button up here, you're going to double tap this, and that's going to start the homing sequence. Now, this is on Onefinity's factory settings, which is, in my opinion, quite slow, but I went ahead and changed everything so that you get the exact same experience as what I'm showing you right here. And yes, the initial homing sequence is going to be quite slow, but the second we start jogging the machine around, we'll get it back to its peppy state once again. I actually even have this little thing right here to be able to turn on my vacuum for my air weights. And every once in a while when I've got the screen over here, the spindle hits it, but I think that we're safe today because I'm not going to be using my dust shoe at all so that I can show y'all every single step, but I will be telling you when it is appropriate to put your dust shoe on and when it's appropriate to take your dust shoe off so that you can go ahead and do the things that you need to while also getting dust collection during your process. All right, congratulations, you have now homed your machine and your machine is ready to be able to be zeroed so that it knows where your material is and the bit that you're actually using in your machine. I will go ahead and say that these files are meant for any Masso machine. Today we're showing it on a Onefinity, but if you have the Onefinity Foreman or you're the Onefinity Journeyman or the Woodworker, all of that is going to work as long as it is a Onefinity Elite machine. If you have the Buildbotics or if you do not have the screen on your Onefinity, this file is not going to work for you. It's just not. So if you have a machine with a Masso, which includes a number of other machines, but today we're focusing on the Onefinity, this file will specifically work for you. Now that we've gone ahead and homed our machine, we want to be able to move the spindle out of the way so that we can go ahead and put down our material and go ahead and put a bit into our machine as well. So what I'm going to do right here, it's already on F3, which is jogging and probing. And jogging is the term that we're going to be using to be able to move the machine around. When the Masso turns on, it's already in step mode. As you can see right here, it's got a little green dot next to it. And we want to move over and tap on continuous mode. Step mode means if you press this, it's going to move over a single step in increments, which you can change right here below it. But continuous means that if you hold that, it's going to continuously move, and obviously that's very slow. So once we have continuous on here, we're going to put our feed from 1% all the way to 100%, and then we're going to move our X over. You can see it's a lot faster, and then we're going to press our Y, and it's going to move that back. Now we've got enough room, let's go ahead and put our material down, and I'm going to show you how I am putting it down so that you don't run into problems with this file. All right, so we could talk about material usage and where to put things and clamping all day long, but for all intents and purposes for this file specifically, I need to make sure that the material is square to the machine, and then I need to make sure that we have clamping in all four corners so that nothing's going to move. We are going to be cutting the whiskey smoker out. Technically, we're going to be profiling, but it is going to have bridges associated with it, which means that the whiskey smoker is going to stay attached to the material, and later we're going to use a chisel to pop it out, all that kind of good stuff for after we actually use the CNC machine. So for this, I want to make sure that I have a screw in every single corner. But one thing that you really want to make sure that you do not do is use one of your clamps to cover up the bottom left-hand corner, because that is where we're going to be zeroing our bits, and that is where a bit is going to be traveling back to. So a screw is perfectly fine as long as it is below the material level, but if you want to be able to use your clamps, you can use that in any corner except for the bottom left-hand corner. So in order to put this down, I'm going to make sure that this is as lined up to the machine as possible as far as being parallel and square to the machine, and then I'm going to be putting in my 4 different screws. For me, I'm just going to be eyeballing this. I've got some lines that are already dug into my material right here, so that is where I'm going to be putting my screws, knowing that the bottom of the material is lined up with those. I did pre-drill all of my screw hole locations just so that I knew where they were going to be, and also to make sure that the screw head top is below the surface of the material, which is incredibly important. All right, so we have our material screwed down. That is not going anywhere. We've got 4 screws in it. And now we're going to be putting in our first bit. That is our 60-degree V-bit. Let's show you how. All right, so this process is very, very simple. What we're going to be doing is using the 2 wrenches that came supplied with our red line spindle here. We're going to put the smaller one right here on the shaft, and then the bigger one on the nut, and we're going to be able to loosen that nut. Once we've done that, we're going to be inserting our bit, and what you're naturally going to want to do is to push this all the way in so that all the gray is completely covered up, and you could do that, but you really don't need to. Another thing that you might want to try and do, especially for like your longer bits, is try and stretch it out as far as possible and just barely have it in there. That's not great either. For me, I like to go ahead and put it in at least 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch to make sure that it is snugly tight inside the collet, and then I'm going to tighten everything down, and that's not going to go anywhere. Finger tighten it right there, and use our wrenches, tighten it the rest of the way. Getting the camera angles for this sucked. All right, so next up we're going to be zeroing our bit to our material. What that means is we're going to be jogging things around on F3 so that our bit, the very, very tip of it, is touching the very bottom left-hand corner. Now, there is a lot of different ways to do this. If you have a tool setter, that is going to help tremendously during your bit changes. If you have a probe or a zero block, or they're called a ton of different things, you can put that here and it's going to help automate that process and also make it a lot more accurate. But today we're going to be doing things the most standard way possible, and that is going to just manually put our bit in the place that we want. We're going to be zeroing our X, our Y, and our Z. And the most important thing that I want to touch on right here is we're going to be changing our bit after this run. And the only other thing that we're going to be changing is the Z. So the X and the Y that we're establishing right now for our zero is not going to change. But once we place a new bit in here, we are going to re-zero our Z because it is a different bit, it's a different length, and the machine needs to know exactly where the tip of that bit is. So let's zero our X, our Y, and our Z. In order to do this, we're going to stay on our continuous mode. As you can see right here, it is still flashing, and we're going to bring our Y down. You can just bring it over wherever you want to, and then the X, and what we're trying to do is, like I said, get to this tip right here. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and lower our Z a little bit. And if you're afraid of how fast it's moving, just bring down the feed rate, and that's going to slow it down considerably. And this is also where a lot of people break their bits because they start moving too quickly and then ram it into the material, and that's no good. But for us, I'm thinking this is really good on the X and the Y. Now we just have to bring our Z down, and we'll zero all three at the same time just to show you how that process works. Like I said, this is still a little bit fast, so I'm going to bring it down to 1%. I'm going to hold Z down for continuous mode and get it pretty close, and then I'm going to grab a piece of paper. Thankfully, Mitz's Woodworking and CNC Design gave me a pad of papers just for this, so we're going to put this underneath our bit, and we're going to continuously move this around as we're having this go down. Remember, we're still on just 1%, and right there, we have intercepted our paper. We have a little bit of resistance, and I'm going to call that good as far as our Z is concerned. Now that we have our X, our Y, and our Z all in the right place, and we know that this is where we want our bit to start off with, we're going to zero our X, Y, and Z, which you can see right here. We press X, Y, and Z. As you can see, all the numbers went to 0, which is why we call this our zeroing process. And now that we have this, we can jog the machine around anywhere we want to. Get that back into frame. And now that we've jogged it around, it doesn't matter because the machine knows that its 0 point is exactly where we set it. So we can move this, we can go ahead and put on our dust boot, which is what you should be doing. I'm not going to be running it with dust collection so that I can show you the process, but you can put your dust boot on after you zeroed everything, and then we're going to move over and actually talk about loading our file and running our file. All right, congrats, we have zeroed our machine. Let's go ahead and load our file. We're gonna go up to F6 and press load file, and that's going to bring up all the files that are currently on your USB drive. For us, you can see right here, this is the Whiskey Smoker 60-degree V-bit, and then the Whiskey Smoker 1/4 inch. These right here are the two G-code files that you're going to have downloaded from the website completely for free. And like I said, if you're following all these directions, you're going to get the exact same results as me, but these are the only two files that we're going to be messing with today. We're going to click on V-bit and we're going to press load. As you can see right here, it's going to populate all of the lines that are included for our G-code to just show you a little bit of a preview of what you're doing. This is incredibly helpful if for some reason you click the wrong file and you load the wrong one. That is not what our V-bit needs to do. This is what our V-bit needs to do. So make sure that you have this loaded. Once that's loaded, the machine understands this is the exact file that we're looking to run. And after that, we can go over to our program MDI. This is the page F2 that we're actually going to be running our job on. This is also where we can have some spindle controls and figure out to make sure that our spindle actually has power. One of the things that I like to do before I actually start any job is press spindle CW. That turns the spindle on, but as you can see, it is not in frame. So F3, we're going to bring our X over, and there we can see it now. Let's go back to our F2, and I'm going to hit spindle CW. And you can see that little collet right here is indeed spinning. It is a very low RPM. Definitely don't do what I did and ever touch your collet while your machine's running, but it is running, it is moving. We know that it works. I'm going to go ahead and press stop because inside of our G-code, the G-code is going to tell the spindle to ramp up to the speed that it needs to go to. It will also tell your dust collector to go ahead and kick on as long as it's 110 volt and plugged in below your machine where it needs to be plugged into. So we have homed our machine, we have zeroed our machine, we have made sure that our material's in the right place, we've installed our bit, we know that our spindle is actually running, and now all we have to do is press this green button right here and press start. All right, that's gone ahead and powered up our spindle, and it's coming in, and there we go, we are now cutting. All right, it is now finished cutting, and then it's brought the bit exactly back to its 0 position. I'm going to go ahead and hit jogging and probing, move our Z up, and then away so that we can talk about what we actually just did. All right, so the V-bit carving worked. One of the things that I didn't notice as I was starting this is that when I went ahead and hit start, because I was moving the machine around and went ahead and got it into its position first, and I needed to press start one more time before it actually came in and started the actual carving. If you're running this file along with me and you already have it in 0 position and you press start, it's automatically going to turn on the spindle, have a 5-second delay to make sure that everything is moving properly, and then it's going to go in and start cutting. And also it looks like I got some pretty chippy oak. So it is cutting out, but it's looking a little bit chippy. All right, so we've done our V-bit carving, and right now we need to go ahead and take our V-bit out and then put our downtown Jenny in. Like I said, you can use any 1/4" bit. If it's upcut, it's gonna leave some strands up at the top. If it's downcut like this, you're gonna have really nice clean pockets. And then if you've got a compression bit, you're going to get kind of the best of both worlds. But for me, I like to be able to use a down shear bit, especially in hardwoods. So, like I said, we're gonna pop out the 60-degree V-bit. We're gonna go ahead and install our 1/4" down shear bit, and then we're going to re-zero our Z, just our Z. All right, so we're still in the F3 tab right here for jogging and probing. And what we need to be able to do is to be able to move over our machine so that the very tip of this bit is touching the very surface of this material. In all actuality, it really doesn't matter where on the surface, because we're really making sure that the machine knows that the tip of the bit knows where the surface of the material is. So of course, if you wanted to, you could bring it back to the very, very edge. But for me, I'm just gonna move around somewhere around right here and go ahead and do the exact same thing, slowly lowering it, making sure we have our piece of paper underneath it, moving it back and forth. And then once it is having a little bit of resistance, go ahead and zeroing our Z, just our Z, not our X or our Y. So we've gone ahead and switched over bits, and we've gone ahead and zeroed out for our 1/4" down shear bit. And all that we have to do now is go ahead and load in our new program and run the job. So let's go ahead and go back over to F1. We're going to find our other file, Whiskey Smoker 1/4", and we're going to press load. All of that data is going to populate right here. It's going to show you a little bit of what the bit is going to be doing. And first and foremost, it's going to go and it's going to create the pocket where all of the Whiskey Smoker chips sit in. And then it's going to create the shelf where the little tiny mesh screen is going to sit down on. And then it's going to create the through hole, and that is where it is going to be all the way through the material. You should have a completely hollowed out material by the end of this. Afterwards, it's going to jump over and it's going to create the profile around the entire Whiskey Smoker itself, while also leaving some bridges so that it stays connected to the material. All right, we have switched things over, and one tip that I wanna go ahead and give y'all is this little button right here to press rewind. What rewind does is it starts the file completely all over again. That can be helpful if you run into a few different things, but it's always good practice to go ahead and hit rewind before you hit cycle start. So let's go ahead and hit rewind, hit cycle start. It's now started and it's gonna start cutting. So both jobs have finished and it has now gone back to its starting 0 position. So let's go ahead and go over to our jogging tab, which is going to be F3. We're going to have everything continuous mode and feed rate all the way up. We're going to press Z up and then go ahead and get this out of the way so that we can see our material. At this point, everything is completely finished. If for some reason you had a jig set up, you could go ahead and throw in your material exactly in the right place and go ahead and run this job over and over and over again and get the exact same results every single time. So let's go ahead and get my impact, free this up, and see what we're left with. Oh, that's gone. And so you can see on the back, we have our bridges right here, and left with our Whiskey Smoker that is now ready to be able to be profiled or whatever you want to do with it to further improve it to make sure that it is ready to sell. It really is as simple as that. At the end of the day, CNC machining can honestly be quite confusing, and you start getting on forums and things start getting even more confusing when people are using a ton of terms that you don't understand. And the best way to be able to understand it is to get out there with your own machine and go ahead and start cutting things out. If you are interested in this machine itself, I'll have a link down below. I've been using this Onefinity Elite for like 2 years now in the shop, and it is perfect. It works every single time, and I've had a ton of different accessories on it that have come and go, but at the end of the day, the machine is still solid said, I absolutely love running it. And as you can see, it's really simple once you start using it, although the screen can look quite intimidating when you first open it up. But hopefully this video did make things a little bit easier. Huge thank you to all of you CNC With Me members. Without y'all, these videos wouldn't exist. Actually, that's the only reason why this video existed, is because Crystal piped up and said, hey, can you make another video going through the Masso but talking about bit changes? So Crystal, thank you very much for the recommendation. Without you, this video would not exist, and without all of you CNC With Me members, this channel would not exist. I absolutely love seeing what y'all are making, and I love seeing y'all be able to use the files as well. So like I said, you can use these files completely for free. G-code, it's going to work on this machine, any type of Elite machine for Onefinity. But if you want the full other files, tutorials, all kinds of other stuff, check out cncwithme.com. All right, thanks. Hope y'all have a good one. Bye.